What's up, YouTube? Today we are talking about how to fix being skinny fat. I want to clarify first, skinny fat, a lot of people look at that as you're relatively lean already. Like maybe with a shirt on, you would look skinny, but you don't have enough muscle to really look defined. So oftentimes you actually look a little bit soft. So you have fat to lose, but you also have a lot of room to build muscle. And the major question that people have here is, well, should I focus on building muscle first or should I focus on burning fat first? Now, I did a video recently on can you build muscle and burn fat at the same time? And the answer is yes, before anyone just loses their shit in the comments. It doesn't mean in the same moment, in one moment, you can burn fat and build muscle, obviously, because to burn fat, you have to be in a deficit, and to build muscle, you have to be in a surplus. But no one is expecting to be shredded in a moment or to build a lot of muscle and burn a lot of fat in the same moment. When I say at the same time, I mean if you follow a workout program, nutrition program for 6 months, you should have built muscle and burned fat over that 6-month time frame. And if you haven't, I would argue that you're either being very inconsistent and or your program sucks. Most likely the inconsistency part. Either way, actually that's an important point, inconsistency in that maybe you'll try and burn fat for a week or two and then you'll try and build muscle for a week or two, because here's the cycle. This is a really interesting point. Most people, what they do is when they're in this range of they want to burn fat and they also want to build muscle, they'll get to a point where like, okay, I'm gonna burn fat now, and then they'll go in a deficit and they'll train appropriately for it, but after a while they're like, ugh, I'm not getting stronger, I feel weak in the gym, I don't see any like definition or more muscle. So then they're like, I'm gonna build muscle. And then they go into a muscle building phase and they do that for a couple weeks before they're like, oh my god, I look gross, I'm getting fat, I'm not I don't look good, my body fat's going up. And then they go back to a fat loss and they go back and forth for like 1 week here, 2 weeks here, and they at the end of 6 months they've done nothing. And it's a perpetual cycle of fucking around and not actually seeing any progress, even though you're working hard, you're thinking about it all the time, but you're not sticking to any one thing. And this is the major issue, right? Where you just don't stick to something and you just flip-flop back and forth. This is actually one of the major reasons why I think coaching is so helpful, because when you get a coach and they're like, hey, this is what you're doing, you can be uncomfortable with it, but like you do what the coach says, and if you don't, like that's your own fault. Either way, the question now is, what should you do? Should you focus on building muscle first, or should you focus on losing fat first? Generally speaking, you have two options to choose from outside of this, and I'll give you my reasoning. What I would first say is you should not, if you're like skinny fat and or if you have fat to lose, but you also want to build muscle, I think a really bad decision would be going straight for muscle gain, like in a straight up muscle gain phase, which basically means going into a phase of calorie surplus. Reason being, if you already have fat to lose and you're aware of it and like you're not comfortable with it, you know when you go into surplus, there's going to be some fat gain inherently. You might keep it to a bare minimum, but there's going to be some, and the psychology of knowing that you're putting on more a little bit can be overwhelming. It can cause you to just be inconsistent because you're like, oh no, I don't want to add any more fat. So you like actually won't be eating as much as you should to build muscle. So you don't actually follow the plan and you just get discouraged. So that's why I recommend when you first start, not going into a straight up muscle building phase. From here, so we take that out, you have two options. Number one is you could go straight up fat loss. Like straight up, you're going hard into a deficit. Doesn't mean like really unsustainable deficit. It just means you're going to be in a deficit, period. It's just a fat loss phase. And you follow that for, realistically, if you're classic skinny fat where you don't have that much fat to lose, but there is still fat there, it shouldn't take you longer than 8 to 16 weeks of a legitimate deficit if you're really following it 100% consistent. If you have a lot more to lose, then that's fine. It might take a little bit longer, in which case you should definitely start with a deficit, like a straight up fat loss phase. But if you're relatively low body fat, you have stuff to lose, but not a ton, 8 to 16 weeks should be plenty if you're actually really consistent with it and in a legitimate deficit. That way, what'll happen is you you strip yourself of the body fat, you get as low as possible, and then you can slowly gain. And you can do this in a either straight up bulking phase where you just go straight up into a surplus, or my preference, rather than going straight into a surplus all like every day, you go into a surplus 3 or 4 days a week, and then maintenance the other 3 or 4 days a week. And that way you have like a net surplus at the end of the week, but it's just enough to build muscle, but not enough to really add so much fat that like you get discouraged very quickly. So option 1 is straight into a deficit, lose your body fat 8 to 16 weeks. Then from there, I would take like a 2 to 4 weeks maintenance phase. Just relax, get your mind off dieting, let your body come to just to maintain for a little bit, 2 to 4 weeks, and then you go into a slight surplus, whether it's a daily surplus or like a weekly net surplus. You go like 3 days high or 4 days high, and then 3 or 4 days lower maintenance. And that way the net surplus is going to help you build muscle. The other option that you have, and this option I think is ideal, but remember, ideal only means that you can follow it consistently, right? It's only ideal if you can follow it consistently. In the same way, a lot of people are like, well, ketogenic dieting is the ideal way to burn fat. And first of all, I don't think it is at all. There's no research showing actually I just got in an argument about this on Instagram the other day. Someone was like, keto actually definitively you lose more fat than if you're in a not ketogenic diet and like calories are controlled. And I was like, well, can you send me a study showing that, a controlled study showing ketogenic versus non-ketogenic, that the ketogenic diet burns more fat? And they sent me a study. They're like, yeah, absolutely. And they sent it to me. Number one, what they found was that within the study time frame, within the short-term time frame of the study, which was several weeks, that the keto diet burned more fat. But over the course of 3 and 6 months, it was equal. So short-term, sure. But who cares about short-term if you can't sustain it? And that's the inherent problem with keto. And then not to mention, the study did not account for calories. It didn't track calorie intake for the ketogenic group. So they could have been in a steeper deficit, which is why they burn more fat. So there's no research showing you that ketogenic diet is inherently better for fat loss. That was a quick aside. Either way, point being, even if it was inherently better for fat loss from a physiological perspective, if you can't sustain it long term, it's not better because you're not going to be doing it. So going back to the second option, I think it's realistically better, but I don't recommend most people do it. I recommend most people go straight fat loss phase, maintenance for a couple weeks, then like controlled surplus, because most people, rightfully so, they function off of progress. So if they see progress in one way, shape, or form, it increases their motivation. With this method I'm about to explain, you will not see quick, visible progress. It will take months. It'll be something where like 3 months in, you'll take progress pictures and you'll compare month 1 to month 3 and be like, oh my God, like I see a difference. But day to day, it's not going to be much. And that's why I don't recommend this for people who are just starting out and or they know you're impatient, or like you just have to be very self-aware, because this method is the body recomposition method, which is like slowly burning fat and slowly building muscle together. So some days during the week, 3 or 4 days a week, you're in a deficit, maybe burning fat, and then 3 or 4 days a week, depending on how many high or low days you have, you're in a surplus. And that will help you slowly burn fat and slowly build muscle concurrently. Again, this sounds ideal, and I do think it is ideal. Like, I do think it is, because by the end of 6 months, you'll have built more muscle while burning fat, which I think is realistically, it's better. But most people will fall off track with it because they don't have the patience or the foresight to know that, like, hey, this is working. I have to trust the process. And it's one thing to like listen to a video and be like, no, I can do it. It's another thing to every day to wake up, look at yourself in the mirror, be a little bit disappointed that you're not seeing fast progress, feel like the scale isn't going in your favor, and then you end up quitting like a week or two in because it's every single day, every meal, every time you look in the mirror, every time you go to the gym, it's not working, and it is, but in your head, it's not, and that's why people quit. So I tend to use that option with people who are either very very experienced and advanced in the gym and their nutrition, and they know nothing's going to happen for a while, and they're patient with it. Or someone, if someone's in the inner circle and I know that person is just going to do anything I say, like I just know they're like, I'm going to follow you to the end of the earth no matter what, and like they're just going to do it and they just trust it, I'll do it with them. But one thing I've learned over coaching is if someone gets in their head and they think that it's just not working, they'll quit. They'll just stop. So you have to be very self-aware and very understanding of yourself and know, hey, am I going to look at myself in 3 weeks and the scale like isn't going to have gone down at all, and I'm going to think, oh my God, I'm not making progress, and then fall off track? That's most people. That's just most people. If you are like that, if you fall in that category, just go straight fat loss. Start off with a very definitive fat loss phase for 8 to 16 weeks. No bullshit, by the way. A lot of people say, I'm going into a fat loss phase. And they're like, oh yeah, like I was having drinks and I was over my calories, so I didn't really hit them. And then it's funny. I was talking to my buddy Mike Vacanti about this recently, where sometimes we'll get emails from clients where they're like a month or 2 months in, and like I don't know why I'm not seeing progress. Like I'm a little bit frustrated. I feel like I should have seen more progress by now. And we'll be like, okay, well, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being like awful, absolutely never hitting your calories, and at 10 being 100% perfect, like every single day hitting your calories, including the weekends, where do you fall on that scale? And they'll be like a 6. Well, no fucking shit, you haven't seen the progress you want, because even though you're thinking about the program every day and it's always on your mind, and you're like, you want to make progress, and like even when you go out and you go drinking and you're overdoing it, in your head you're like, shit, I shouldn't be doing this. That mental stress is making you almost think that you're putting in a lot of effort, but when you actually analyze it and you're not, a 6 out of 10, I mean, even if we just take the traditional 80-20 rule, 8 out of 10, like, you're not doing it. Even if it was like you're not even 8 out of 10. And that's what most people need to actually see some progress. So when I say do a legitimate fat loss phase for 8 to 16 weeks, give yourself a fair chance and do it. This is another topic about flexible dieting that I should probably make a separate video on, but the idea of the flexible dieting crowd, I shouldn't say that. What has become the idea of flexible dieting is that you should never be strict. You should never be rigid. You should never, if you want to eat ice cream, you should eat ice cream. If you want to go over your calories, go over your calories. And I agree. If you want to, you should. But there also has to be an understanding, if you're not being consistent, don't expect progress. You can't be consistently going over your calories and then be upset that you're not making progress. So one thing that is really important to me is there's nothing wrong with being strict. There's nothing wrong with being strict. It would be like if you owned a business, or you wanted to own a business, and then there was flexible business owning, and it was well, if you don't want to work one day, you don't have to work one day, and you don't want to post content, you don't have to post content. If you don't want to send your clients what they need, then you don't have to. It's yeah, you don't have to, but then people don't have to pay you. And people don't have to be your clients, and people don't have to, you won't be a successful business owner. Same thing with this. If you want to lose fat, do you have to, can you not ever go out and eat ice cream? Can you not go over your calories? No, of course you can, but you don't lose fat if you're doing that more often and you're not hitting your calories. So there's something to be said for being strict at some point, and that's okay. Be strict. And then once you've built up enough, once you've done it enough, it's sort of like a bank account. When you first open a bank account, you have $0, right? And so when you first start depositing, when you first start opening a bank account and you want to save money, you're not going on vacations, you're not buying yourself a lot of gifts or clothes, you're saving, you're putting money in. You're strict with your cash. put it in the bank, save it, save it, save it, save it. Then once you have some saved up, you can say, okay, you know what, like, I'm gonna buy myself a jacket, I'm gonna go on vacation, I'm gonna get my mom something, but like you're still pretty strict with it, but you can be a little bit more lenient. And then all of a sudden you have a lot of money saved up several years later. You have a lot of money saved up and you can be a little bit more lenient with it. You can take a bunch of money out. You could take several $1,000s out, go on a vacation. You can loan a buddy some money if he needs it, whatever. And then not only do you have enough saved up in the bank where taking money out isn't like a huge issue, but you also have new systems that constantly run to get more money back in the bank, right? It's like you have a better paying job, you have higher paying income, you might have several forms of income if you own your own business. Like, that's what fat loss is. When you were starting out at a higher body fat percentage, you got to save up money, you got to put money in the bank, get lower body fat. Then once you've gotten to a lower body fat, then you can be like, oh, you know what, like I can have a treat here and get right back on track. And I can have this, and it's not going to be as big of a deal because you're already very low body fat or relatively low body fat. And then not only that, but you can get right back on track. You have systems in place so you don't start binging, so you don't lose your mind. So it's just like part of your life. Flexible dieting is earned, right? And at first, you have to understand that if you're not going to be at least a little bit strict with yourself and hold yourself to a standard, you're not going to see progress. And being strict and being forgiving are not mutually exclusive, in that you can be strict and go off track for a day and not hate yourself for it. That's totally fine. I think a lot of people think being strict means that you have to punish yourself. No. Being strict just means hold yourself to a higher standard of this is what I'm going to follow. And then if you don't follow it one day, cool, that's fine. Get back on track and be strict again. Be strict. Don't think you're a fat ass. Don't call yourself names. Don't think you're worthless. Like, that's completely separate. Being strict and being an asshole to yourself are two separate things. Just hold yourself to a higher standard. Do what you want to do. Let the actions let your goals, what you say you want to do, match your actions. If you actually want to do it, be strict for a little bit. If you don't, that's fine. It's totally fine. It's great. You should do what you want to do. But don't hold this idea of success over your head that you're never letting yourself achieve because you're just not willing to do it. Just be honest with yourself. And that's going to be a way easier way to be happy in the long run, because maybe you don't want to be shredded to bits. I have no interest in being shredded to bits. None. I've done it before. If you want to see pictures, they're on the internet. I've been shredded. It's not fun, right? I would way rather be a slightly higher body fat percentage, be able to have pizza when I want, go out and have beer when I want. But if I was starting right now at 30% body fat, I would have to spend more time in a strict deficit before I could work up to that point. So that was a longer rant than I expected, but I hope it helps. Either go into a straight up fat loss phase, like 8 to 16 weeks, be in it definitively, no bullshit. Or if you're actually one of the 1% of people that can be very patient and do some type of calorie cycling, body recomposition of slowly building muscle and burning fat at the same time, give it a shot. Just be aware, if you're not patient enough and you need to see that visual progress week to week or every couple weeks, don't do that. It's just not going to be a good fit for you yet. Might be in 2-3 years down the road, but not yet. So, love you. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. If you have any questions, by the way, this was day 16 of my 30-day challenge. Tweet them at me, at SYATT Fitness on Twitter. Any questions, let me know. Talk to you soon.